Here.
Hi. Typical. Good morning, good evening, and welcome to Conversations to Create Change, brought to you by BooGio 11 Productions. I'm Divya Chandra, the founder of the Women of India Summit, and this is a continuation of our work with the Women of India Summit. I'm thrilled to, as always, welcome my favorite person in the whole world, Christine Agro, who, since you last spoke to her and saw her on one of our Facebook Lives, has added not only internationally recognized metaphysical expert and authority, she is now an internationally recognized best-selling author. Her book, Awaken and Grow, has been a bestseller for the last month in America, in India, in Australia, in Germany, and Canada. Did I get that right?
I think so. I lost
So,
track.
well, if it's the kind of thing you want to lose track of, uh, we're so thrilled to have you, and congratulations on the success of the book.
Thank you so much.
And I'm on my third read. And this is the chapter that really got my attention, besides all the other things that got my attention, was on, it's a chapter called Learn, and it talks about the difference between unconscious and conscious learning. And this is the line that really got me. And I think what you say about spiritual work being, the truth being really simple, it's not complicated. And this is why I wanted us to pick this as a subject for people who are not aware of the distinction between conscious and unconscious learning. Simple lines. When we are unconscious, we learn by being pushed, pulled, and dragged along. Our lessons are learned not by choice, but by happenstance. We have an experience, and if we don't learn the lesson, we create similar experience to try and learn it. And if we do not, then the pattern goes on and on and on. And this really stayed with me. And I thought of all the people I've encountered through the summit or through the work that I do, and this is the main distinction between when I see people trying to work on self-development or trying to progress, not in that old dynamic of let's try really hard. If you fail and you succeed and you fall down, you get up again and try again, and hard work brings you everything. And for me, that's the old dynamic. I'm not saying that it's not a worthy dynamic, but it's an old dynamic. Whereas conscious learning, which is I've learned through you and a lot of other teachers, is this very clear distinction when I meet people in the summit or in my private practice or people I interact with socially, is that people who are learning unconsciously learn through adversity. And I have never heard it coined as succinctly and precisely as you do. So will you talk a little bit about learning unconsciously through adversity, please?
Sure. One of my favorite topics. So over the years and working with people, and that's where all of this information really comes from, is both through looking at my own growth and looking at people during readings and students during classes. And I started to see these patterns or these similarities in the way that people were doing their work. And what became so apparent to me was that when we don't know what we're working on, the way that we work on it as humans is through adversity, because we don't listen. Right? We tend to not listen unless things are really, really hard and something is really, really pushing us and pressuring us to create change in our lives. Otherwise, we just kind of go along. And we can see that from our own life, and we can see it in the whole, right? The macrocosm of humanity. Here we are with this huge climate change issue barreling down on us, and we're still refusing to change, right? We're still sitting in that unconscious space, and as if, it's not going to affect me. It's not bothering me, right? So we really, as humans, when we're learning unconsciously, and when I say unconsciously, it's not even the people who have awareness, right? Who understand, maybe they're socially aware, maybe they're environmentally aware. People of that level of being can still be working on their life lessons unconsciously. And so it's really about taking ourselves from this place of unconscious learning, where it's all being done to us and we're being forced and pushed and pressured into creating change, to stepping into that place of conscious awareness where we're we're actually looking at what we're working on and understanding it so that we can work on it consciously. And eventually we just let go of all of that adversity. And if you think about it, because we do this microcosm, macrocosm. So when I say that, I mean like what I'm working on and then what the whole is working on. If we make that shift in ourselves and we recognize how actually simple and easy life is, at the macrocosm level, we have the potential to do that, right? We need more of us to get to this space of conscious awareness.
What is a common place that you see this playing out in people's lives that you work with? Because I get the environmental example is perfect. We think in India, one of the common things is we look at politicians around us and we think one of the common things is that that's not the person I voted for. But the fact that if you don't participate, that is the person you voted for.
Exactly.
That's how
Yeah.
What is a common thing that you see in your work? Because you work with thousands of people and you're working with people around the world and you have for over 20 years. What's a common thing that you see? Where do you see this show up? Give us an example, if you can.
It definitely shows up in our relationships, although I like to say everything is a relationship. So whether it's your relationship to money or it's your relationship to your mother or your father or your sister, brother, right? It's all a relationship. But if we look at the interpersonal relationships, I think that's one place where it definitely can show up. There's somebody in your life who just you're at odds with, and it creates a lot of stress and tension. Drama's a good indicator that there's something going on. And rather than looking at it and saying, well, what am I working on? What am I trying to learn here? What's the lesson? We just keep sort of playing out this role in this dynamic in this space. And if we don't learn the lesson, the pattern just keeps going on and on and on, whether it's with that person or we move on to another person. Because sometimes we get tired of working on it with one person. So we're like, oh, I'll go over here. And then we work on the same thing. It can show up in our workspace where, like, let's say, so we have if everything, which I love to do in live events, just have people come up and they ask me a question, and then I find what the core life lesson is that they're working on. But basically everything can boil down to 3 core life lessons. The first one is learning to validate ourselves. The second one is standing in your truth. And the third one is standing in your power. And they're not in any specific order. They all they all have the same weight. Oftentimes we work on all of them at the same time. Sometimes we work on just one, but those are the 3 core life lessons. So let's take a work example where you don't feel valued, you don't feel seen, you don't feel appreciated in your workspace, and it creates stress for you. You are emotionally upset, you're physically not feeling well. So you decide, okay, I'm going to get a new job. Like, I can't do this anymore. They don't value me. They don't appreciate me. So you go and you get a new job. And typically what happens is you may have 6 to 8 months of like a honeymoon period. And then all of a sudden the same stuff is coming up, whether it's coming up exactly or it's coming up through another, sort of tributary flowing into it. But basically you're working that lesson of learning how to validate yourself, right? Having value for yourself, knowing that you are of value and not needing somebody else to tell you, which actually creates freedom, which is why I love that lesson, because once you can validate yourself, once you know that you are of value, and really own that, it creates freedom because you don't need anybody else to show you, tell you. It's nice when they do, but then it's appreciation. It's not validation. So those are just some examples of where it shows up in our life and how when we don't know what we're working on, it's adversity, right? It's challenge, it's drama, it's angst, it's stress.
So what happens when you have become conscious of that, okay, I know I'm working on this particular life lesson, because I know we've talked about this before and I find it invaluable as well. 3 lessons: truth, power, validation. Once you figure that out, how does that shift? What have you noticed in your own space?
Like, how does it shift your life experience?
Yeah.
Well, things don't go away because people are still working their stuff unconsciously. Like we have to remember it's not like a magic pill that just like all of a sudden there's nirvana. But what happens is our life changes, right? Our experience, the way that we move through the world changes dramatically um, because we're not getting caught up in that stuff, and somebody can be having whatever situation they're having, and we're just working on it in our own space. And two, what I find really interesting, and especially with the holidays, it's a fun time to play with not stepping into old dynamics and old pictures. And the more that you hold your own space, work these 3 core life lessons, we have in this work, we have the tool of neutrality. The more that you sit in neutrality, in family dynamics, you will find that, first of all, it's confusing to everybody if you're not showing up in the role that they expect you to show up in, right? They're kind of like, wait, what's going on here? And then somebody else will take that role. Like, it's just fascinating to see, like, to sit back and go like, look, they just stepped into the role that I used to play. And they don't do it consciously, right? They just do it because you're not doing it anymore. And when you look at it that way, you really start to see how much energy you've put into this unconscious learning piece, which really can be put toward, your desire to manifest whatever it is that you want in your life, right? If your energy is not spent on trying to learn your lessons unconsciously, all of a sudden you've got all this power that you can put into creating what you want.
Yeah, because my next question to you was going to be like, why do we have challenges? And that answers it completely. Because one of the things that I learned from learning this from you was that when you're sitting in that place of drama and tug and push and tug and someone's always doing stuff to you, you end up sitting in the archetype of the victim. That this is happening to me. This is being done to me. And when you sit in that picture and you sit in that particular stage setting, like I'm playing the shrew and you're playing, the abuser or whatever, you forget that you have the opportunity to say, actually, I don't want to work on it like this. I think I'll just stay out of this drama. It's not the way I talk to, like something my sister says all the time is, in our family, we don't talk to each other like this. And I thought that's such a simple tool to extricate yourself from whatever the situation and saying, I am choosing that in my family, we don't talk to each other like this.
Right. Yeah.
And it's such an awareness. It's such a simple but an aware piece because you're choosing not to play a particular dynamic out.
Right. And I think too, it goes to that unconscious conscious space, right? When we're unconscious, we don't even know that we're in basically a role, right? That there's like, everybody has a role that they play, and all of those roles are so that unconsciously people can work on what it is that they're working on. And once you step into awareness and you understand this, then you get to choose, right? And that's why this work is really about creating personal autonomy, right? It's about that ability to stand in who you are fully and completely. And you start to have these awareness pieces. I just felt like little ahas go off. Did you feel that? Yeah. I was like, boop. It's having that ability to really stand in who you are, and being able to see what everybody is playing. And as you start to step into this work, it's not like there's so many layers to it. And I think it's almost like, I always talk about it as like this sort of like the hall of mirrors that just keeps going and going, because there isn't really an end to this work. It is ever unfolding, and you're always stepping more deeply into something more and richer, and like, wow, like I can't believe that I can now do this. Anyway, I lost my track. I lost it.
It's good because you were talking about when someone else is learning unconsciously. For someone who's not quite as self-aware as you, how do they know that they are playing out a lesson unconsciously?
I would say adversity, right? I would say anything that shows up in your life as adversity means you're working on something unconsciously. Because when you have awareness, you have the choice of where you sit in that experience. And it's everything from your personal relationships, to your workspace, to your health issues. Um, you and I were talking the other day on WhatsApp, and I told you something that was going on, and you were like, "Oh no," and I was like, "It is what it is," and you were like, "Huh, yeah, right." It's like we can step into whatever is, and I've had a lot of things happen health wise. And I think the funniest one, and it's like funny, not like funny, haha, but I had an atypical hyperplasia in one of my breasts, which is precancerous. And so, in the medical community, that's like, oh, so they removed it. And then the next thing I knew, I was going from my breast surgeon. She was recommending me to an oncologist. And I was like, what the heck? Like, no, like I'm not going down this rabbit hole. And so he came in to see me, and he was like, well, I've got to go run some tests, and I'll come back and I'll tell you what I think. And I, as he walked out of the room, I set my intention, and I was like, okay, this is ending right here. Like, I'm not, because he was talking about like tamoxifen and, doing like chemo. And I'm like, no, like, this is not like, so I did, I set my intention. I was like, this ends here. I'm not going any farther with it. I've gone far enough down the rabbit hole. And he walked back in, and it was like, he was a different man. It was so interesting. He looked at me and he goes, well, yeah, he goes, I think, just do regular mammograms. We'll keep an eye on it. And I think that's good. And I was like, yeah, okay, thanks, bye. Right. Like, I was just like, but I do think that so like unconsciously stepping into the drama and the fear. And I'm not saying that those things aren't real for somebody who is in that state, right? I mean, I feel fortunate that I have this awareness, and I can come from things from this perspective. And I really want to help everybody come from things from this perspective, which is why I wrote the book, because I want people to understand that there's a process that we go through. But, so if you're sitting in the fear, if you're sitting in the giving your power away to the medical community, because that was the big lesson for me there, was like, I have choice here, right? I don't have to step into this if I don't want to. I could have stepped into it, and I would have been like, he would have had me on a tamoxifen regimen. He would have had me doing like isolated radiation on the spot. And it was like, I wasn't going to do that. There was no reason to do that. They got everything. Like, I was like, why? We'll just monitor it. So, I think that's a good example of being in two different spaces and having that groundedness and centeredness to be able to pull yourself back and just say, whoa, this is not a road that we're going down.
That's a great example. Radha's joined us from London. She's saying hello. And
Hi,
Sarah is joining us from Texas, saying hello. We will be taking questions later if you would like to think up what would you like to ask Christine, since we have her preciously for this moment. I was going to ask you, when you say stepping into consciousness and conscious learning, what does that mean to somebody who's a novice? How do you step into consciousness?
From my perspective, it's the way I get people there is, and I hate to say this because it sounds like it's one of those answers I don't like when people give during an interview, but it's like, it's doing this work, right? It's really stepping into being grounded, being aligned, coming into your body, learning neutrality, all those things. And I don't, because so since 1999, I was given the edict from my spirit to not take other people's classes, not read other people's things, because for whatever reason, and I guess I kind of get it, it was important for information to come through me and to be clear in that way, not to be a regurgitation or a reiteration of what somebody else has already said or done, which I think happens a lot, where people take and then they fine tune it, or which is not a bad thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but I think that's what happens a lot in this work, is that people, they take it just that step farther. Like, I understand it just a little different. So the way that I was guided was to just bring the information in. And I do have this sort of natural like curiosity. I just want to know how does it work and why does it work that way? And I love digging to find the answers, like those universal truths. So all I can really speak to is the work that I know. Like this is how people get into like being in a place of conscious learning, which is the tools that I know. I'm sorry that's, sort of me specific.
No, I mean, I look at it as a very simple thing. Like, you talk about awaken and grow. That's the title of your book.
Yeah.
And a lot of your programs. And just the awareness that you are this drama or this adversity or this particular situation holds within it the potential of a lesson. And it's not some arbitrary, somebody, the universe bad, whatever. My past life stuff, it's the wrong month for me. There are lots of things that attribute to adversity. But I think the biggest piece that I've gotten from reading your book and following your programs is that the moment you're aware that there's more to this, that's awakening, that's stepping into consciousness.
Yes.
Because then you're not a victim of circumstance or happenstance, and you're not being tugged. And even if you are, you're like, okay, why am I being tugged? And what can I do?
It's how you get there. And I guess, the book definitely is like, I had somebody say to me that the book is a spiritual lesson in itself, which I kind of liked because I think it is. I think that in reading it, you will. When I write things, I think there's generally, or talk about things, there's generally this thing that once you hear it, you really can't go back, right? You have the information and you can't undo it. You can't. So the book is very much like that, where, as you read through it, you're gaining insight about how our process works, why it works that way, and then what you can do in order to take yourself to the next level or to go deeper, because I think there's certainly levels. From my place, I'm like, why stop there? Why stop there? Keep going.
Madhu has joined us from Pune. We've got Priyanka here from Gurgaon. Everyone saying hello.
Hello.
I absolutely love, I know we're running on time, so I just wanted to read this bit out to you. You constantly talk about aligning with your spirit, talking to your spirit. Spirit gave me this thing. And oftentimes when I'm talking to people who are not as aware as you are, or have not read as much as I have possibly, telling them that your spirit, what's the difference between your spirit, your mind, and your ego? And I love this line, this whole para that you wrote. May I read this out?
Sure.
It says, our ego is similar, only it drives us through needs and wants and a desire to be validated, to be acknowledged, to be seen and approved of. If our ego is guiding us, we can easily get off our path as we seek for something to fill us and tell us that we are okay. The clarity, ease, and flow that comes from when we align with our own spirit and we allow ourselves to be guided by our own higher self, that aspect of us that knows why we are here, what we are working on, and that aspect that holds the map of our destiny, of our life's journey. That was such a great articulation of why we align with our spirit and step into consciousness as being driven by ego or the mind. Because you always talk about, I think you said this in our last conversation as well, that the mind only knows what it knows.
True.
And that's what people miss out. And the way you articulate it, and there's a whole chapter on it, and I highly recommend people get the book.
Yeah. Can I just say something?
Angie, go ahead.
Can I just say something? So there's this thing. So I noticed as people step into this work, and I want to put it out there. I talk about it in the class space. We can just as easily get into a place where we give our power away to our spirit, right? Where it's like, spirit told me to do this. Spirit said this. Spirit guided me here. Spirit wants me to do this. Spirit, right? You're giving your now you're giving your power away to your own spirit. You're not actually aligning with spirit. You're still in the same dynamic. So whether you do that with the universe, you do that with spirit, it's still the same kind of dynamic. And I just want to say that because you know, I catch it sometimes when people are talking, and when I say, you know, spirit, blah, 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 I don't do it very often. I say it specifically because I want to differentiate between me and this higher influence that is saying, here's the direction, right? Here's the edict. Really, that's what I say. It's like I have this edict from my spirit that this is it. I'm not giving power over to it. I'm recognizing that this is my path, right? This is what I've been asked to do, and I'm clear about that. But it's a little different from being like, well, spirit told me to go here, and spirit told me to do this, and spirit told, right? It's like I just I know that place, right? I know that place. I'm laughing. And please know that I'm not making fun. I am just saying, be conscious of that. That's another place of conscious. Like these are the layers that we get into of going deeper. I know.
What, did we just echo?
Yeah, I was like, I really wanted you to hear that twice.
Yeah, the first time. No, I get that. From a very young age, when I'm going to school, we start getting disconnected from our own knowingness, which is like, we've all had those experiences with people in relationships and situations where you get this feeling that this isn't quite what it's seeming to be, or we can spot a lie, or we can spot love. Like, when someone really sees you, or you read something and it resonates with you in a visceral way that you can't really explain, or you go to a place and you have a certain energy around that. I look at those as messages from spirit, like my dad has passed, and I know that in various ways he still talks to me, and as woo-woo as that sounds, I get messages from him all the time. I feel like my spirit is still connected to his.
Right.
I think for different people it shows up in different ways, and I think as children we're disconnected from it very easy, very quickly, by other people saying, "Oh, bad boy, good girls don't do this, bad girls do that,"
Mm-hmm.
So you disconnect from that. But there are moments, I think, that all of us have where that you're connected to something. Music does that to people. Poetry does that to people. Art does that to people. That's why it's so universal, and that's why it's been there for so long.
Yes.
It's rich, it's pure, it's deep, it's real, and you know it. And I think that's what your work does. It brings all of that into day-to-day living and challenges that one faces, as a parent, as a sibling, as a daughter, as the owner of a business.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely brings ourselves into being I like to say, the captain of your own ship, right? You're actually steering the ship, rather than being like on the boat and the boat's just going. Right? Yeah, I mean, it really puts it, and you said this earlier, it really takes us out of that place of things being done to us, right? Which is that victim energy, but it's that it really puts us in a place of understanding why things are happening in our life, so that we can then learn and shift and grow. And that's the whole thing. And that's really, when people say, why are we here? It's so simple. At the very, very core of all of it, it's to learn, to heal, and to grow. Like, that's it. That's why we're here. Everything else on top of it is like, it's icing and cherries and all the rest of the stuff, right? It's the fun stuff that you get to do once you have this awareness that this is really why we're here, because it evolves the whole. It takes the entire collective forward.
We could do this all day. I'm on my third read of your book. If anyone wants to pop in questions, we've got Christine for another 5 minutes. Else, is there somewhere they can find a little bit more information about you, Christine? Will you give us your handles again, please?
Sure. You can find the book at Awaken and Grow book.com. There's some information there. It's available on Amazon. That's probably the easiest way to purchase it. You can purchase it off my site, but I'll be honest, I'm really slow in mailing things. So Amazon's a good place to get it. And awakenandgrow.com is the website. On social media, I'm Christine Agro everywhere. So YouTube, Instagram, And I just launched Awaken and Grow TV, so that's kind of fun. Yeah, I'm enjoying that. So you can find that at awakenandgrowtv.com. I do them live on Facebook, so there is a page there, Awaken and Grow TV, if you want to, be in the more sort of live aspect of it. Yeah, so I don't know, pretty much everywhere.
Christine, thank you so much. With you, it's always such a I feel like we're on our 9th PhD. Like every book is so amazing. Every session is so amazing.
That's so sweet.
I'm gonna ask you one last time. I'm gonna let you go. I know how crazy your days are. What's the one thing about this work that still surprises you about stepping into consciousness and awakening? Is there anything that still surprises you when you work with people?
Well, I think for myself, personally, is that, like I said earlier, there's always a deeper place to go. I mean, I had somebody ask me in an interview once if I was fully, what did they say? Fully evolved or something like that. And I was like, oh no. Right? Like, I mean, I think there's always a deeper layer and level. And I get excited about what that means and the possibilities. I once had a teacher tell me that I would get to the place where I could open my hand and say apple, and an apple would show up, like that instantaneous manifestation piece. And I took that literally. And then one day I was at the house, and I went to the grocery store. I came home and I was like, oh, I forgot the apples. And I swear, like 5 minutes later, my mom came in and she said, oh, I bought apples. Right. It was like, and I was like, oh, maybe it's that kind of instant manifestation, right? Like I needed it and there it was. So I just think we are incredibly powerful. And the more that we step into consciousness and conscious living, conscious awareness, the more we get to tap into that power. And I think I mentioned a little bit about like our core life, our reason for being is to learn, to heal, and to grow. And basically it's the more that we create purity of mind and purity of heart, the more that we can access the power of our spirit, because we don't get to access that until we have that, because otherwise we're going to be creating things that aren't right for us and take us off on that are just ego driven or mind driven. So those are all, I think, the important things. And I do just want to say, I do have a Facebook group. It's Awaken and Grow. It's group/Awaken and Grow. I love to connect with people. I mean, we do all sorts of stuff on that page. Divya, I don't know, you can speak to it maybe a little bit better than I can, but I mean, I'll open it up to Q&A sometimes. I do Facebook Lives. I just really enjoy connecting with people. I'm definitely really passionate about sharing this work at whatever level, and helping people.
I mean, I've gushed enough. Most of the time when I speak to you about how empowering this work is, because it really takes you out of that mode of, like, no matter what your situation is. And when I wrote the review for your book, I really truly meant that anybody could come from any part of the world and be in the most extreme and dire circumstances and find some jewels of wisdom, like you just dropped it, from the purity of heart space and how we create the power of spirit. Because I think one of the things that we're taught about right and wrong when we're young. And one of the things that I've learned along the way working with you and other teachers is there is a different kind of this instantaneous manifestation that you talk about, life being in flow. It's not that circumstances life becomes, perfect. Things keep happening, but you find ways to navigate that. And one of the things that I've learned through you is this notion that when we are connected to spirit and we step into consciousness, there's so much power, there's so much grace, there's so much flow in your life, and things just happen. And that's something that I don't think we're taught about. We're taught about right and wrong when we're growing up. And especially in India, you're taught, there's such a vast, thing of wisdom here, the Vedic Upanishads, there's in every field it's been explored. It's over a 10,000-year-old culture. But I think the simple thing of when you're in alignment with spirit, with source, whatever you want to call it, what begins to happen in your life. And it could be an apple, it could be an opportunity, it could be a book. There's so much that can be maneuvered and managed in a better way when you step into consciousness, start becoming aware. I mean, we could be here till tomorrow talking about.
I know.
all
I'm
the
enjoying this conversation so much. Can I also just really, I want to say thank you to India. I know that sounds like sort of huge, but because the book did reach bestseller in India, and for somebody in the States, the person I was working with, she was like, we never reach bestseller in India. So I just really want to say thank you.
Well, because the information resonates. It's true to form. Truth
Yeah.
speaks to simple. Thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate. I know how busy you are, and I will read the book for a fourth time and find more things I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everyone who's been on from all over the world joining us. And this is truth, that you have people from like various parts of the world showing up on this little Facebook Live. Thank you so much for being here and joining us. And until next time.
Thank you.
Bye.